Alright, Karina baby, today is the 3rd of July. Let's see what today's story is. It's shells. Okay. Look at all of her shells on the ground, on the sand. Shells. A shrimp has a shell, a crab does as well, and so does a tortoise and snail. But the best shells for me are the ones by the sea. I'm collecting them up in my pail. This little girl's collecting her shells in her pail by the seashore. She's collecting seashells. Alright, let's see what is in. So yesterday, Mama got to watch Maleficent and then Maleficent 2. And today I got to go out and help with the cow and milk the cow. We live on the farm, so we have 2 cows that we get to do things with every day. We feed them and we bring them outside. It's a good thing. Amber asked me today if I'd ever have a farm like this one day. I told her yeah. I told her your papa and I have always talked about it. Alright, today is the Emperor's new clothes. Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so exacerbably fond of new clothes that he spent all of his money on them. He cared nothing about his soldiers, nor for the theater, nor for driving in the woods, except for the sack of sewing of his new clothes. He had a custom for every hour in the day, instead of saying, as one does about any other king or emperor, he is in his council chamber. The people here always said the emperor is in his dressing room. Life was very happy in the great town where he lived. And then for the word happy, they used the word gay. Life was very gay in the great town where he lived. Hosts of strangers come to visit in it every day, and among them one day were 2 swindlers. They gave themselves out as weavers and said that they knew how to weave the most beautiful fabric imaginable. Not only were the colors and patterns unusually fine, but the clothes that were made of this cloth, had a particular quality of becoming invisible to every person who was not fit for the office he held. He who was impossibly dull. Those must be splendid clothes, thought the emperor. By wearing them, I should be able to discover which men in my kingdoms are unfit for their posts. I shall distinguish the wise men from the fools. Yes, I certainly must order some of that stuff to be weaved for me. He paid the 2 swindlers a lot of money in advance, so that they might begin their work at once. They did put up 2 looms and pretended to weave, but they had nothing whatsoever upon their shutters. At the outset, they asked for a quantity of the finest silk and the purest gold thread, all of which they put into their own bags. Well, they worked away at that empty loom far into the night. I should like to know how these weavers are getting on with their clothes, thought the emperor, but he felt a little queer when he reflected that anyone who was stupid or unfit for his post would not be able to see it. He certainly thought that he need have no fears for himself, but still he thought he would send somebody else, first to see how it was getting on. Everybody in the town knew what a wonderful power the stuff possessed, and everyone was anxious to see how stupid his neighbor was. I will send my faithful old minister to the weavers, thought the emperor. He will be best able to see how the stuff looks, for he is a clever man, and not one fulfills his duties better than he does. So the good old minister went into the room where the two swindlers sat working at an empty loom. Heaven help us, thought the old minister, opening his eyes very wide. Why, I can't see a thing. But he cared not to say so. Both the swindlers begged him to be good enough to step a little nearer and asked if he did not think it was a good pattern and beautiful colors. They pointed to the empty loom. The poor old minister stared as hard as he could, but he could not see anything, for of course there was nothing to see. Good heavens, thought he, it is possible that I am a fool? I have never thought so, and nobody must know it. Am I not fit for my post? I will never do to say that I cannot see the stuff. Well, sir, you don't say anything about the stuff, said the one who was pretending to weave. Oh, it is beautiful, quite charming, said the minister, looking through his spectacles. Such a pattern and such colors. I will certainly tell the emperor that the stuff pleases me very much. We are delighted to hear you say so, said the swindlers. As they named all the colors and described the particular patterns, the old minister paid great attention to what they said, so as to be able to repeat it when he got home to the emperor. Then the swindlers went on to demand more money, more silk, and more gold to be able to proceed with the weaving. But then they put it all into their own pockets. Not a single strand was ever put into the loom. But they went on as before, weaving in the empty loom. The emperor soon sent another faithful official to see how the stuff was getting on, and if it would soon be ready. The same thing happened to him as to the minister. He looked and he looked. As there was only the empty loom, he could see nothing at all. It is not this beautiful piece of stuff, said both the swindlers, showing and explaining the beautiful patterns and colors which were not there to be seen. I know I am no fool, thought the man, so it must be that I am unfit for my good post. It is very strange, though, however, one must not let it appear. So he praised the stuff he did not see, and assured that he was delighted in the beautiful colors and the originality of the design. It is absolutely charming, he said to the emperor. Everybody in town was talking about the splendid stuff. Now the emperor thought he would like to see it while it was still on the loom. So, accompanied by a number of select country courtiers, among whom were the two faithful officials who had already seen the imaginary stuff, he went to visit the crafty impostors who were working away as hard as ever they could at an empty loom. Isn't this magnificent? Said both of the trusted officials. Only see, your majesty, what a design, what colors, as they pointed to the empty loom. For they each thought no doubt the other could see the stuff. What? Thought the emperor. I see nothing at all. This is terrible. Am I a fool? Am I not fit to be emperor? Why, nothing worse could happen to me. Oh, it is beautiful, said the emperor. It has my highest approval. And he nodded his satisfaction as he gazed at the empty loom. Nothing would induce him to say that he could not see anything. The whole suite gazed and the whole suite gazed and gazed, but saw nothing more than all the others. However, they all exclaimed with his majesty, it was very beautiful, and they advised him to wear the suit made of the wonderful cloth on the occasion of the great position which was just about to take place. Magnificent, glorious, excellent. When from mount to mount, they were all equally delighted with it. The emperor gave each of the rogues an order of knighthood to be worn in their buttonholes, and the title of gentlemen weavers. The swindlers sat up the whole night before the day on which the procession was to take place, burning 16 candles so that people might see how anxious they were to get the emperor's new clothes ready. They pretended to take the stuff off the loom. They cut it out in the air with a huge pair of scissors, and they stitched away with needles without any thread in them. At last they said, "Now the emperor's new clothes are ready." The emperor, with his greatest courtiers, went to them himself, and both swindlers raised an arm in the air as if they were holding something. They said, "See, these are trousers. This is the coat. Here is the mantle," and so on. It is the light as a spider's web. One might think one had nothing on, but that is the very beauty of it. "Yes," said the courtiers, but they could not see anything, for there was nothing to see. "Well, your Imperial Majesty, be graciously pleased to take off your clothes," said the impostors. "Then we may put on the new ones right here before the great mirror." The emperor took off all of his clothes, and the impostor pretended to give him one article of dress after another of the new clothes which they had pretended to make. They pretended to fasten something around his waist and to tie on something. This was the train. And the emperors turned round in front of the mirror. "How well his majesty looks in his new clothes! How becoming they are!" cried all the people round. "What a design, and what colors! They are most gorgeous robes. The canopy is waiting outside, which is to be carried over your majesty in the procession," said the master of the Ceremonies. Creaments? "Well, I am quite ready," said the emperor. "Don't the clothes fit well?" Then he turned round again in front of the mirror, so that he should seem to be looking at his grand things. The chambers, who were to carry the train, stopped and pretended to lift it from the ground with 2 hands, and they walked along with their hands in the air. They dared not let it appear that they could not see anything. Then the emperor walked along to the procession under the gorgeous canopy, and everybody in the streets at the windows exclaimed, "How beautiful the emperor's new clothes are! What a splendid train!" And they fit to perfection. Nobody would let it appear that he could not see nothing, for then he would not be fit for his post, or else he would be a fool. None of the emperor's clothes had been so successful. "But he had got nothing on," said a little child. "Oh, listen to that innocent," said its father, and one person whispered to the other what the child had said. "He has nothing on," A child says, "He has nothing on." But he has nothing on, at last cried all the people. The emperor withered, for he knew it was true. But he thought the procession must go on now, so he held himself stiffer than ever, and the chambers held up the invisible train. See, the king, the emperor had nothing on, right? He realized when it was way too late, after all the children were like, he has nothing on, he has nothing on, what is going on, he has nothing on. So he's out there naked. He's in front of all these people naked. He probably has on a pair of, like, underneath his waistcoat boxers. He probably has on a pair of underwear. But, like, he didn't wither. He didn't go down. He didn't cry. What did he do? He straightened up his body. And he's like, the procession must go on, right? It must go on. He must finish out what he's doing. So he continued to go and be where he was and do what he was doing, and he didn't give up, and he didn't run away, and he didn't, like, he just kept going on. That's what you got to do sometimes. Sometimes your situation is just hard, and there's no right answer. And sometimes you just gotta lift your head up and be like, I'm not okay, but I'm going to be okay. It's not okay right now, but it will eventually be. Like, is he gonna be in trouble for being naked outside? He probably has on a pair of underwear. He's fine. So, like, and he's the emperor, so he can do what he wants. So, alright, so our next story is The Astrologer. A man learned to observe the moments of the stars in order to predict the future. He soon became famous as an astrologer, and people traveled for miles around to pay for his advice. One evening this man was walking along the road, his eyes fixed on the heavens, and what great fortune he saw there. But meanwhile he paid no heed to the path, and before he knew it, he had tumbled head over heels into a pit of muddy water. His neighbors heard his shouts and came running. But when they saw who had fallen into the hole, they had no pity. He could predict the future, but he couldn't foresee this, one of them cried, and another, helping the man up, told him, "You'd better spend less time watching the stars and more time watching your feet. Don't neglect small things when thinking of great ones." That's right. Nothing is too small. You have to, and look at him. He fell down. Where is he? He fell down, but he's looking up towards the stars, right? There are so many great things in this world that you want to get to, but the most important thing is your family, your children, yourself, your, like, you know, not really yourself. Well, don't throw yourself away either. But, like, you know, but, like, think of, like, the small things that are really important. Doing dishes and, you know, making sure that there's clean clothes and good food. Like, the small things really add up. Because if you're not eating right, then you don't feel good, right? So you need to really, like, take care of yourself so you can take care of others. You know, this man is so busy looking up towards the stars and trying to make future plans and tell the future for other people and for himself that he's not looking about what's right in front of him. And our lives are short, our days are short. So, the Horse and the Stag. Long ago, when the horse and the stag lived together in the forest, they argued and fought over who had the right to graze on the most tender meadow grass and drink the sweetest pools. Over the years, they came to be openly at war. The horse went to a man who lived near the edge of the forest and proposed an alliance. "Help me defeat the stag," she told him, "and one day I'll do you a favor in return." "Very well," said the man, "but you must let me put this saddle on your back and this bridle over your head, or I won't be able to help you." The horse agreed, and together they went in search of the stag. When the stag saw the man riding on the horse, he fled in terror, for the man and his dogs had often hunted him before. The horse neighed in triumph. "Thank you, good friend. I will never forget your kindness." And now, will you please take off the saddle and the bridle?" But the man simply laughed. "You are a fool to let me harness you in the first place," he said. "You won't get them off so easily now." And the horse suffered under the bit and spur, had to serve the man for the rest of her days. Revenge often carries a high price. It really does carry too high of a price. Revenge isn't worth anything. This horse had freedom, but it was fighting with the stag. So, she got captured. Alright, this is the next one. Look at the mice and the cat. The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. A mouse who lived in the country invited her cousin from the town for dinner. The country mouse worked all day to prepare the dinner, gathering a few peas, a stick of barley, a crust of bread, and cold water, and a green leaf to drink. When the Town Mouse arrived, the humble country mouse set all the best foods before her guest. The Town Mouse ate a few of the peas and tasted a bit of the bread, trying her best to be polite. But at last she turned to her cousin and said, "My dear, how can you live like this? Ants and worms eat better food. Come with me to the city, and I'll show you how a mouse should live." That very night the country mouse went with her cousin to the grand mansion in the heart of the city. The two mice crept into the dining room, where the remains of a banquet were still spread on the table. "Look at all these good things here," the Town Mouse said proudly. "The two little honey on your bread. Have some of the cheese, it's delicious." The country mouse gazed about her in wonder, but just as she prepared to take her first bite, there was a hiss and a yowl, and a cat leaped onto the table. The two mice fled with their lives, and barely managed to dash into the hole in the wall. "Don't worry," said her cousin, "the cat never stays for long, and we can soon finish our dinner. We'll be perfectly safe as long as the dogs stay away." "A cat and a dog," cried the astonished country mouse. "My dear cousin, you may stay and enjoy your feast, but I'm going right back home, where I can eat my crust of bread in peace. Poverty in safety is better than riches in peril." That is very true. The Sick Lion. A lion who has lived many years found he could not hunt as well as he once did. He feared he would starve until he came upon a plan to catch fresh meat. He crawled into his cave and sent the crow to spread the news. The king lion had not long to live. "Tell them," he said to the crow, "that all must come to see me, and I have an important message to deliver to each before I die." The deer was the first one to come, but when she reached a dark corner of the cave, the lion leaped on her and devoured her. And when the wolf and later the rabbit arrived, he treated each the same way. The fox had also heard of the lion's message and hurried to his cave, but at the mouth of the cave he hesitated. From inside the lion called out a weak and quivering voice, "Is that you, my wise friend Fox? Why don't you come in and pay your respects to the king?" "Forgive me, King Lion," replied the fox, "but I see that footprints of the deer and the rabbit and the wolf all entered your cave, and none coming out again. Surely I can't be good for your health to be in crowded quarters. Until someone leaves and there is more room, I think I'll wait out here. Make sure there is a way out before you get in." Karina, baby, always make sure there's a way out before you get in. When you're 16, you might be starting to date, right? Mama doesn't really want you to date until you're 16, because when you're 16, you should have a car and a license, right? Or else you should be able to borrow Mama and Papa's car, one of our cars, and you should have a license. I don't want you going on dates unless you have a way to be able to leave. I don't want you going on dates by just showing up at someone's house and not having like your own way of transportation, or showing up at the mall, or at, you know, a theater or something. Like, you could always call mama and papa, but you have to have a way out. Like, that's just an example. Like, that's a prime example. I don't want you in danger ever, ever. Like, that's why I never want you to leave my side until you're at least like 7, like, and you're bigger. But like, and you're not even 7 yet, you're only 5. But like, and life doesn't go as planned, baby. It just doesn't. But like, always have a way out of a situation before you get yourself stuck into a situation. Sometimes you'll get yourself stuck in a situation, you need to leave quickly, and you have to like rely on your resources and play, like, just be smart about what you're doing. Just be smart about what you're doing. Never be rude to anybody, never break any bridges, but just, like, mama was in a situation months back, last year actually, where I had to get out of the situation. I had to leave as quickly as possible. So I put a message out on the internet, and I called my friends, and I was supposed to be in a safe place, but I wasn't. Okay, so I needed to leave as quickly as possible. So you always need to make sure, like, right now mom is in a really, really good situation on the farm. The farm is absolutely amazing. I love everyone that I'm here with, and it's just a good situation. But sometimes you think that you're going into a good situation, but you're not. Watch your surroundings. Always look up. Always look around you. Okay? Watch your surroundings. Alright. The garden, and always have a way out. I don't want you going on dates until you're like, you have your own vehicle and a way of transportation. You have your own cell phone, a way to call out. You, like, I just, this world can be scary. It can be. The gardener and his dog. Well, a gardener was at work one day. His little dog chased a butterfly about the flower bed. Playfully she ran this way and that, paying no heed to where she was going, until she slipped and fell into a deep, cold well. The gardener heard his dog, frightened, barks, and came quickly running. But when he reached out a hand to pull her to safety, the ungrateful animal growled and snapped at his fingers. "Little beast," the gardener cried, "I came to rescue you, and this is the thanks I get? Then stay in there until you find your own way out." Don't bite the hand that feeds you. That's why mama never argued with papa. Mama always just agreed and obeyed papa, because you don't bite the hands that feed you. You never do. Never do. So, the dog was being ungrateful, right? So, the boy who went swimming. That doesn't mean that you don't find a way out, though. Like, if that gardener wasn't being nice to that dog, and that dog fell in the well, and the gardener came to save the dog, and the dog was like, "Nope, I don't want you," then that dog better be able to find its own way out. It's probably going to rain, and the water's going to come up, and then the dog's going to be able to leave on its own. It's not going back to the gardener, though. But, you know, but don't take mind of how people treat you, but don't. I know you're a lot like me. I know how polite you are, and I know how sweet you are, and I know that you just want things to be the best that they possibly can be. I know that you're like that, because mama's like that, and you've always been like that. The boy who went swimming. A boy who was walking by the river on a hot day could not resist the temptation to go for a swim, but the current was much fiercer than he expected. As he struggled to reach the shore again, the river swept him downstream towards some sharp, deadly rocks. As he kicked and splashed, the boy spotted a man walking along the riverbank. "Help me," he shouted. "What a fool you are to go swimming in the river," scolded the man. "What would have happened if I hadn't come along? When I tell your parents what a risk you took, they'll give you such a hitting. Why, when I was a boy—" "Please, sir," the terrified boy cried out, "save me now, and afterward you can lecture me as much as you please. There is a time and place for everything." That is right. There is a time and place for everything. The Travelers and the Bear. 2 men were traveling through the forest together on a lonely trail. Soon they heard a sound up ahead, as if heavy feet were trampling through the underbrush. It could be a bear, one whispered with alarm, and quickly as he could, he scampered up a tree. He had barely reached the first branch when a huge brown bear thrust aside the branches and stepped onto the path. Hugging the trunk with both arms, the first traveler refused to lend a hand to his terrified companion, who threw himself on the ground and prepared for death. The bear lowered its great head and sniffed the man, rustling his hair with his nose. Then, to the amusement of both men, the fierce beast walked away. The first traveler slid down from his tree. "Why, it almost looks as if the bear whispered something in your ear," he marveled. "It did," said the traveler. "It told me to choose a better companion for my next journey." Misfortune is a true test of friendship. Misfortune really is a true test of friendship. You really do find out who your friends are when you're in a hard jam. And Mama knows that where she is loved and she is cared for, because people help you if they're your true friends. It's very true. You really find out who's there for you and who's not. The Fox and the Crow. One morning a fox was traveling through the woods in search of a tasty morsel to eat. Looking up, she spied a crow perched on a tree overhead, with a large piece of cheese held tight in her beak. "That cheese would be just the thing for my breakfast," thought the fox, and settled down beneath the tree. She gazed up at the crow as if hypnotized by her beauty. "Loveliest of creatures," she called loudly, "your feathers shine like silk. Your wings are as black as night. How bright your eyes glow. Oh, it's such a pity. I've heard that you can't sing. If only you can sing just one note, you'd be the most perfect creature alive." The crow, hearing all this flattery, quickly grew vain. "Why, the fox is right. My feathers are beautiful. My eyes do glow," she thought. "Not sing? Why, surely I can sing, and better than any common bird in the forest." And she opened her mouth to let out a loud caw, caw. Down flew the cheese, and the fox snapped it up in 2 bites. "Thank you for my breakfast, friend," she called. "I see you have a voice indeed, but where is your brain?" Never trust flatterers. She lost her cheese because the fox told her how beautiful she was, right? The Wolf and the Crane. A wolf with a bone caught in his throat darted towards the forest, begging for help from every animal he saw. But weary of his sharp teeth and fangs, no one dared to come near. At last, the grasping wolf called out desperately, "I promise a fine reward to anyone who will take this bone out of my throat." When the crane heard this, she stepped forward boldly, for everyone knew that the wolf was rich. The wolf opened his jaws wide when the crane gingerly pulled the bone free with her long bill. At last the wolf cried out in relief, and he turned to go. "But have you forgotten my reward?" the crane called anxiously. "What?" snarled the ungrateful wolf. "Isn't it enough that you put your head in a wolf's mouth and live to tell a tale? Now fly off before I decide to finish my meal and eat you." Right? So, the wolf let the crane live. That was her gracious reward. That was it. Alright, the next one is, did you get to see that photo? There's the crane and the wolf. And the wolf is right. He did let the crane walk away with her life. In that respect, I guess she should be grateful. Little Crab and his grandmother. Grandmother Crab was quietly rustling on the seabed when Little Crab scuttled by. Foolish child, she scolded. Why are you walking sideways like that? You should always march straight ahead and show the world you're proud to be a crab. Now Little Crab was proud to be a crab, and he wanted the world to know it. Show me how, grandmother, he cried, and I'll never walk any other way. With great dignity, Grandmother Crab stood up, but when she took a step, she would only go sideways, just like Little Crab. And when she tried again, she tripped and fell with a thump on the ocean floor. Grandmother Crab sat up stiffly. On second thought, Little Crab, she said, a true crab should always be very proud to walk sideways. Master what you teach. So, Grandmother Crab, all crabs walk sideways, right? They walk this way and that way. They can't walk straight. But Grandmother Crab's like, you should always walk straight, right? But Grandmother Crab naturally can only walk sideways. Always make sure you know what you're talking about before you open your mouth, right? And it's okay to think things and not say them. You can always think to yourself. The donkey and the lion skin. By chance, a donkey came across a lion skin lying in the bushes. I'll put it on and pretend to be a lion himself, he declared. Dripping the skin over his shoulders, the donkey hid in the underbrush. Each animal that passed by took one look at the lion, tanning fur, then through the tree, the donkey glimpsed the red flash of a foxtail. Quickly, he hid himself again. That fox has called me a fool too often, the donkey thought. Well, see who the fool is now. As that fox came trotting along the path, the donkey jumped out and brushed and looked out at the defeated. As the fox came trotting along the path, the donkey jumped out of the bushes and let out a defending hee-haw. The fox laughed. You might have frightened me with the lion's skin, he said, but if you haven't opened your mouth. Fools can disguise themselves, but not their words. It's very true. And look at see the donkey and the lion skin. The Crow and the Pitcher. For weeks and weeks there had been no rain. The streams and pools had dried to dust, and all the animals were thirsty. Two crows flying together in search of water spotted a pitcher that had been left in the garden well. They flew to it and saw that it was full of water, but neither one could reach far enough inside the pitcher's narrow neck to get a drink. There must be a way to get that water, said the first crow. If we think it through, we'll find an answer. The second crow tried to push the pitcher over, straining with all of his might, but it was too heavy to budge. It's hopeless, he crowed, and flew away to look for water elsewhere. But the first crow stayed by the pitcher and thought, and after a time he had an idea. Putting up a small pebble on his back, he dropped them into the pitcher until at last the water rose to the brim. Then the clever bird happily quenched his thirst. Wisdom and patience succeed where force fails. How true is that? See, he put a bunch of pebbles in there, made it to the brim, and now he's drinking his water to his fill. Another crow is flying around still looking for water. Sometimes all you need is a little more patience. All we need is patience. It's like, that's why Mama used to sing patience to all the drivers down the streets, because they had no patience, it seemed like sometimes. Alright, the children and the frogs. A group of children gathered near a pond and began to skip rocks across the water. They laughed and cheered as the rocks skimmed over the surface, sending plums of springs flying. Meanwhile, a family of frogs who lived in the pond covered among the lily pads, terrified of the stones that flew and splashed all around them. At last, one brave frog dared to poke her head out of the water. "For pity's sake, please stop," she begged. "It's only a game to you, but it's life and death to us. One person's play is another person's grief." Look at these rocks and how scared these poor little frogs are. Yeah? Alright, I'm coming. Alright, tomorrow's going to be the Travelers and the gold coins. Alright, Karina baby, Mama loves you. Mama's going to go to the library and we're going to go to church. I love you so very much. Lila Tove, and good night to you. Lila Tove, may your dreams come true. We sing Lila Tove, may Israel protect you throughout the night until we reach the morning light. I love you.